All right, everybody, welcome to the Doc Jacque Show. I'm really excited to have our guest on today. This is a guy that I was really fortunate enough to meet, and it was pretty random. It's one of those things where my wife is always telling me, get out, go meet people, go network. And one of my good friends, Kyle Depius, who runs the Guys Trips, guystrips.co, and he had an event in Scottsdale. So I went down there with my wonky finger, trying to get a workout in with my other good buddy, Dr. Matt Zanis. And we got to meet each other. So Pat and I kind of hit it off almost instantly. We were doing a kind of a roundtable discussion. Who are we? What do we do? Who do we see? And as soon as he started speaking, I was like, you know what? I need to talk to this guy. So I got talking to him, started hearing a little bit more about his story. I was like, I really need to get this story onto the podcast and also help to promote him, because what he's doing is helping people to radically change their lives. So Pat, he is a mindset and health optimization coach. He does neurochange solutions consultants as well. And he does this through the trainings of Dr. Joe Dispenza. So without further ado, I'm going to basically pass it off. You're going to hear our conversation here today, and I'm so excited to share this with you. Thanks for tuning in as usual. All right, so we got Pat Smith here. So Pat, thank you so much for joining us today. As I said on the intro, I was very, very, very fortunate to be able to meet you in a random situation where you just so happened to be traveling across the country. You stopped in Scottsdale. I ended up going to this event, heard what you did, and I was like, yeah, we've got to talk. So I want to say thank you for joining the show today, but I also want you to go ahead and introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do? And kind of what got you into this line of work?
Sure. Yeah. So obviously, thank you for having me as well and the time. It was definitely a random meetup, but it was super cool because not only did I get to meet you, but I got to meet a lot of other guys. And so for myself, currently, what I do full time now is I'm a men's health optimization coach. So focusing on lifestyle hacks, nutrition, sleep, movement, and then also focus a lot on the mindset. And on top of that, I'm also a consultant for a group called Neurochange Solutions, which is somewhat of a corporate wellness company, corporate wellness or conscious proactive change company based in neuroscience that's been developed by Dr. Joe Dispenza. So there's about 150, I believe, of us consultants globally over across 30 countries. And so we take that work into companies to teach them all about emotional intelligence, how to regulate their emotions, understanding what it means to truly change, utilizing neuroscience as the basis for it. And so it's kind of a long path for my journey to get here, but I think that's everybody's path. We all have our ups and downs. And so for me, I started from an early age, always working out. My dad always took me to the YMCA with him, and they were having to fill out these certain passes, and all I could use was the machines, no free weights, no barbells, nothing. But I was heavy on the machines, and I was tracking my progress, and I loved that. And that was super cool, and I think I kept that always with me. I was always working out. I was always in sports. But when I got into maybe middle school time frame, I think I didn't really know what to do with maybe my emotions. And so I started to kind of get into some trouble, right? It all started with me just smoking weed, and nothing against that. But then as that rolled into high school, then it was, okay, now weed and now pills, Percocet, Xanax, then I'm drinking as well. And then that rolled even further when I stepped into college. And now it's not just weed, pills, alcohol, even more alcohol than normal. And then I'm kind of going into all the hard drug stuff. And now I'm totally off the radar. And the one thing that was a staple for me the whole time was working out. But I never focused that my mental health was probably struggling. I'm sure my nutrition was lacking, and my gut was probably all tore up from the amount of alcohol I was drinking 6 to 7 days a week. Yeah. And so a year after school, I left school, went back to Indiana, where I'm from, where I lived for about 27 years, lived in my parents' house, and decided I was going to come to Charlotte, North Carolina. I planned to move here with a cousin of mine who was already living here, and we signed a lease. We're about to move in. I drove down, brought all my stuff, was super excited to move in. And when I came down, he actually was on a work trip, and he actually got killed in a car accident while he was on the work trip. So I came down one day, found out that the next day, and pretty much drove home a few days later. And it kind of sent me into this downward spiral of like not knowing what to do. And it really got me into, a dark place, because my main focus or way to mask my emotions or grieve was to go back to what I had always done for almost a decade, which was drugs and alcohol. So all the money I had saved up to move to North Carolina was gone within a summer because I was doing Lord knows what.
Yes.
And so when I finally came to and realized, all right, I have a trajectory that my life's going right now, and it's not a good trajectory. And so like, what can I start to do? So I started to, first I had to get a job. So that was the first thing. Then I realized, like, what else do I want to do and what am I passionate about? And it was always health and wellness, but I didn't feel that I had all the knowledge that I was looking for. So I went back to school and got a holistic nutrition certification through a university called Bowman University, and it's in Berkeley, California. And what it opened my eyes to really was that it wasn't just the food. It wasn't just working out. There was so much more to it. And it mostly was talking about how, your mind plays a role, the stress reduction plays a role, the community you're around, being in nature, all those things. And so that's where I really started to dive into understanding the mindset through meditation, journaling, just like focusing on my energy overall. And that's kind of when that book, the first book that I read of Dr. Joe Dispenza's, kind of fell into my lap probably 3 or 4 years ago. It was Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And it reminded me of, all the things that I was carrying with me in terms of stories that really weren't serving me in any way. And I was allowing the environment to control how I thought and felt instead of me dictating how I thought and felt. So fast forward, I had worked in a sales job for quite a while. I was making great money, multiple 6 figures, and I just felt like I wasn't quite doing what I really loved. And so middle of last year, after going to a couple of week-long meditation retreats for Dr. Joe Dispenza, I realized, like, how can I share this work with everyone else? Because I saw how profound it was for me in changing. And when I did that, I learned about NeuroChange Solutions, which is one of his few companies. And it was funny, I applied for it and they denied me. And I was thinking, like, all right, so I wasn't going to let that deter me. So I asked, like, what do I need to do? How can I? And so they're like, well, you got to send in a video replay of you teaching some of this work so we can understand you'll be proficient in it. You'll be an effective leader, effective facilitator, which I went ahead and did. And then I got accepted. And in June of last year, I went to kind of the Train the Trainer event, which was a 5-day long event where they taught us how to then facilitate that same work, followed by a 6-month process of really practicing that until we got the full license to then take that in to the kind of the world around us. And what really piqued my interest was when I was at my old job was the stress was so high, the chaos, the disorganization, the fear of what was next, the uncertainty if someone might keep a job or not keep a job was not allowing that company to really move the needle forward because everybody was in survival mode. All they wanted to do was stay safe. They didn't want to take the next step forward into doing something new. And so I was like, okay, I was there, and I feel that I have the knowledge now to be able to open those doors for companies to then move forward. So a long-winded story, but that's kind of what drove me into understanding and wanting to get really specific on the mindset work, especially with meditation, because I know how helpful it was to me, how it changed me, and then how I see it could help others, in the world and have a bigger impact than just something for myself.
So do you think, and that wasn't a long-winded story, that was great, but do you think that you would have gotten fully into this line of work had you not, scheduled to move to Charlotte and not lost somebody that was close to you?
Probably not. I think if I would have stayed in Indiana, where I'm from originally, it was a smaller town. I don't really know the population. It must be 50, 60, 70,000. It's not big, right? And so it was just, I was in a lot of the same environment. So my trajectory was up. If I was in the same environment doing the exact same things with the exact same people, I was going to get the exact same results. So as unfortunate it was for the events that I had to go through to get to that point, I think I would have stayed comfortable with having the normal job, sticking in my hometown, never opening my eyes to what was bigger and my actual gift. But the move itself, even though it didn't work out the initial time, because now I am back in Charlotte, fast forward 5 years later, it wouldn't have led me to this point. Probably not.
Yeah. And I like to call those events like the sledgehammer of life, which is like, sometimes we're on the wrong trajectory and we'll get like these little nudges, and sometimes we can become meatheads and we ignore them for a certain period of time. And then all of a sudden, somebody's like, hey, I'm going to hit you with a sledgehammer to get you to change. And it is usually a very unfortunate or a tragic event, either to somebody else that's close to you or to yourself. And it's like that rock bottom, and you have that chance to kind of reevaluate and say, where do I want to go with this? And I remember when we were talking, you were talking about, you were at the Dispenza seminar, right? And you got a phone call. It was a really high stress call, and you're like, oh my gosh. And you're basically like, from there, you're like, no, I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to go do this full time. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So first, like you said, the nudges. And one thing I think only a few people know, I feel like I got those nudges a lot. I just was like, all good. I just recall one of the times when I was kind of on, weekend long, doing whatever type, really like a bender.
Yeah.
I was in Chicago downtown with a friend. We went out to a concert. All I know is I wake up like at 4 a.m. in literally an alley with no phone, no wallet, like don't know where I'm at. I'm in the middle of Chicago. Gosh. And I was like, what in the world? And you would think that would have been like my rock bottom, right? But then I was like, just blacked out. I'm good. I can just make it. Man. And anyways, so that's, you're right. It's funny when you say that. There was definitely nudges that were like, hey, Pat, like move forward, do something different. But being ignorant to what was actually going on and being so unconscious to that made me not move forward like I probably should have. And the Joe Dispenza event, which was in October, I got a call, and it was just very high stress call. And I felt like it was my calling, and opened the door for me to be like, all right, I've been thinking about moving out of this job for a while now. Is this the right time? Is this the perfect time? I don't know. I don't think there is one, but it allowed for the doors to drop down for me not to have to be so vulnerable. They kind of opened the doors for me to say, hey, you even like this job? Are you interested in staying? And I was just like, you know what? Honestly, no, I was going to probably leave in the next couple months anyways. Let's just cut to the chase. And then, that leap of faith is scary, but at the same time, it's super exciting and empowering.
Yeah. And one of the books that you mentioned too, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, I wanted to look to see if I had it on my bookshelf, because it's one of my top referrals for a lot of my patients.
Sure.
And what's unique is, for anybody who's read the book, from what Pat's saying here, you kind of had to put those principles in play, right? Because when you break the habit of being yourself, you have like the old roots that you have to kind of rip out or get rid of, because the old friends, the old family members, the old thought process, your body did the best it could to keep you safe, or theoretically safe in that moment. But when you're trying to grow and expand, the old you is the safe you, and when you don't know what the true trajectory of where you're going for the future is, it could be scary. So it's cool that you read that book, did the training, and then like you kind of just so happen to already have the training to be able to make that separation to really be able to go out on your own. So it's really unique to see that play out in real life.
Yeah. And much like you said, right, we step out and then we go back. And it's kind of what I talk about, and even in my program, is the river of change. So you're here on the old self and you're trying to get to the new self, but right in the middle are some choppy fucking waters. And the moment you step out and put your toe into that water, your body has been so accustomed to, then it's going to throw all the stops at you. It's going to say, hey, Jacque, you know what? This is uncomfortable. Let's go back to what we've done for however long. Or it's going to bring up a thought you hadn't thought for 20 years just to try to keep you reeled back in. And so the moment you go in, your body's conditioned into the past. And so you step out and you're like, all right, this feels okay. And then something pops up, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, life happens. Oh, this happens. Oh, someone else triggers something from the past. And now we revert right back. And that's really whether the mindset and the brain fascinates me, is because it talks about we have these super highway amounts of connections in the brain. And so over time, I'm 30, so everything that I've learned and experienced up to 30 has been hardwired into my brain if I believe in acceptance, surrender to it. So it takes a lot to prune those away, but while you prune those away, you can also rebuild them. But if the old networks and connections in the brain are more solidified and stronger than the new ones that you have, every time you step out into that river of change, if you're not persistent with it and consistent, they're going to default right back to that. And that's what I did for so long, right? I always thought, I'm going to change the way I live. I'm going to do this. And it lasts like a day or a couple weeks, and then automatically I default right back to who I always was, and that's essentially what that breaking the habit of being yourself always is, right? You got to shed the skin off, just like a snake, and come out to be a new person.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not easy. I think that's for anybody who's just out there listening. You're like, well, it sounds easy. It's not. I mean, you can make it easier by what you're saying, the thoughts and beliefs and putting the emotion behind it. And to me, one of the things I really like to suggest for people, and you probably do too, is have a really strong why, right? So like the motivating factor or the sledgehammer of life, like, that happened for a moment when I got jumped in 2009 and almost died. That was my pivot moment. And so I always look back, and that's why I don't want anybody to ever feel that way. So that's my motivation to continue to improve myself and improve the health of others. So it's not easy, but you can make it easier by the things that you're kind of preaching here.
Yeah.
How is it that you have been able to integrate this, not just in your life, but for those that you work with? What are some of the common things that you see, common themes that you see with people, and how do you get the results that you ultimately get?
I think a lot of it is just the limitation that I see my clients put on themselves. They say that I can't, or, it's too hard. And right away that neglects them from ever moving forward, because the brain doesn't know the difference between when Jacque says, I am not strong versus I am strong. So if you tell it you're strong, it's going to start to produce chemicals like, all right, I am strong. But if you do the opposite, like, I can't do this, it's automatically going to basically negate that. And so one thing that I always look at for clients is that when they come to me is they might have a goal in terms of they might want to lose weight, right? They might want to learn how to eat better. But I always implement the mindset part of it so that we can start to get to the root of why have you not already done that? And the reason being is we know not to eat McDonald's 7 days a week. Like, that's information in our head, but the information hasn't moved from the neocortex, where all of the information is stored, into the limbic brain for us to personalize and demonstrate it and have an experience of what it feels like not to eat McDonald's however many days a week. And then once you do that over and over again, you just start to become, it's a habit forming, right? It's become innate in you. It becomes visceral. It's easy. It's common. And so I like to integrate the mindset piece to really establish those habits so they're not just quick fixes or patches or Band-Aids, and they're actually sustainable and long-term. Because when I first started only doing nutrition consulting, what I noticed was individuals would come to me, all right, I need a meal plan. I want to eat better. And I'm like, all right, here you go. Like, rock on.
Yeah.
It'd be 2 weeks, just like I used to. It'd be 2 weeks, and then I'm falling right off. So there was an underlying cause why that was happening. And so I like to integrate both sides of it is, hey, we can still build these health-forming habits, but if we work on getting the mindset right as well, then those two pair up, then it integrates things a lot easier. They work together, and it fast forwards the process, and it makes it sustainable. It's kind of digging to the root cause of why they've been defaulting back for so long.
Yeah, and there's those familial patterns that we have developed with, I automatically think of when we're sick, right? Or we have a tummy ache. What did we typically get as a child? Chicken noodle soup or something of that nature. And I actually saw a podcast the other day, and it said that the placebo effect, basically, that red medicine that is red, actually works better at reducing pain than any other color. So a lot of it is like our brains processing it in the meaning that we give to whatever it is. And when we break those ties, it is uncomfortable because we're used to that default. But I see a lot of familial sacrificing with my patients. And so I want to try to speak to some of this and see if you see this as well. Where it's like, usually I'll have the wives come to me. Occasionally the husbands will be the first ones in, but then somewhere along the line, actually I'll give an example of a patient. She's pretty overweight right now, and every single time she sits down to eat, her husband chirps in her ear, don't eat that, you shouldn't eat that much, don't eat all of that, don't eat this. And so it's constantly reinforcing, you're overweight, you should eat less, you're just like a lot of negative association with it. So she tries really, really hard. We were scheduling like a month out, and it turned out we had to meet like every 2 weeks with her to try to just mentally keep her on course because she kept being attacked by her spouse. Do you see that a lot, like the emotional sabotage from spouses when people try to start with your program?
I haven't seen that too much, but I can see where that would definitely, play a role, because they're feeling stressed and they're allowing that outside influence to dictate how they think and feel. And right then when that happens, they're automatically going to go back to what's safe. And, I would say maybe potentially for that specific client, right, they might have used eating as a coping mechanism to begin with, which might have got them to where they are. And then you add that more fuel to the fire. Well, when they're trying to do the opposite and then someone's kind of, like I said, adding fuel to the fire, then it might not be helping. I hadn't had that personally, but I could definitely see how that could happen and hinder the progress because, one thing I noticed was individuals came to me with losing weight and they might have worked out well and then they would eat good. And that was wonderful. It started to move the needle to where they were looking for. But if they never reduced the stress, which could be from a spouse, from the outside influences and kind of understanding how to reduce that and kind of stabilize that, then I don't think that they're going to get the progress that they're really looking for because the body's in survival mode. So it's like, we're stressed, so let's just store everything because we don't know when the next time we're going to get this is, right?
Yeah. And an important piece on top of that, you brought it up a couple of times, and you're so brilliant that you just passively skate past like a lot of really awesome stuff. So the perception piece, right? Like we're willing to accept outside influence or outside thoughts. Can you describe a little bit more into that? Like how can people better disassociate from the outside pressures and how to perceive it properly?
Yeah, it's really understanding that, if we're not, and this is kind of a part of it, is like if we're not being defined by something than what our senses have already told us, then we're automatically going to give up our free will and to free will to either a set of programs that we've developed or the news or traffic. So if we go from one thing to the next, stress, we give up our free will to consciously think on what that is. And so when that happens, our brain waves are going into high beta, which is, right now we're in low beta, which is conscious and aware. And it's kind of a calm, chill mode. A lot of information's coming in and out. You're hearing me, you're smelling whatever's cooking in the background, all this, and that's fine. We're in low beta. But then when you start to be over analytical and you start to jump from one thing to the next, news is pissing you off. Now you got traffic and now you walk into work and a coworker's sitting right there that really just ticks your buttons or whatever, you're starting to spiral into what's called high beta. And when that happens, you can't take any information in other than equal to how you're feeling. So if you're stressed, you're not even going to notice that, someone's trying to give you a compliment. You're going to be like buzz off and it just doesn't comprehend. So the one way and one thing that we really talk about in my work, and then also when I teach with companies and programs, is how do you slow down and get back into low level beta through breathing techniques, through anything to self-regulate that, starting to focus on gratitude or starting to just kind of disassociate yourself with that environment. Because once you get down to that, then you're equal to be able to take in more information and make conscious and aware thoughts. Because once you're spiraled in high beta, you're not really in a place to change or to do anything different than equal to what's going on. So you're going to somewhat, to a degree, fall victim to that environment over and over again. And I always think of it as like a filter. So if you accept, believe, and surrender to a negative response from your boss and you just believe it to be true without saying, hey, is this true? Is it true that I'm really a worthless worker if the boss said that? Let's look back at your past history. It got you to this point. You obviously aren't because you have this job. Right. So kind of having that filter and always reminding yourself, is this true? Because if not, and you just accept, believe, and surrender it, now you develop a state of mind. And that state of mind then sends signals to the limbic brain to make chemicals to make you feel that way. So if you say, I am angry because you're jumping from one thing to the next, then right away it sends neurotransmitters, which sends neuropeptides to the hormonal centers, which is normally the adrenals, to spike cortisol. And your brain, which is involved in everything you do, start checking in with the body and says, damn it, Jacque, yeah, you feel pissed. Let's develop some more thoughts, because it wants to adapt and make it easier. And now it's a thinking and feeling loop, and without any conscious awareness, people just go on for that loop for 20, 30, 40, 50 years on end. And we basically can become addicted to those thoughts, and they start to push those genetic buttons that lead us to disease. And now here we are, way too late to try to fix things way down the road, right? They weren't very proactive with it. So the conscious awareness, the questioning of, is this true? And then just knowing that you get to choose how you think and feel. It doesn't have to be someone else, the outside environment, to dictate how you think and feel every day.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, that's so huge. Again, just brilliant. And I like to use like analogies of things too, where I always put my wife on a spot when I'm talking to like people, because I played college ball, like college football. So like if you put me on a football field, I perceive that as like a really good time. I don't care who's on the field. It could be Pee-wee, it could be pro. Like I'm going to try to compete at that level, and I'm going to have so much joy and excitement from it because that's how I perceive it. You put my wife on the field and say, go ahead, throw this football, go tackle these people. She's going to be stressed out. She's like, get me the hell out of here as quick as possible, because this is not good for me. I don't enjoy this, right? And it could be something that we experienced in the past, or, stimulus that we experienced in the past, and therefore we've created a meaning and emotion behind it. Or it could be something that's unknown. And if you're in that high beta and you're just constantly going, you don't have time to sit and be like, is this actually a threat? Or is this just because I don't know what the heck this environment is? Give me time, I'll learn, and I'll be better in this environment.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is fantastic.
Yeah. I think one thing you mentioned is like, when we're in that survival mode, you think of it as our initial, as humans, as we evolve, we were trying to do one of three things, and we were trying to run, fight, or hide from that lion. And we're doing that same thing when we're stressed out and all the time. And you're not in a time to grow, to evolve, to heal, to change, because there's a lot of shit going on in you if you're letting that spin you out of control without any conscious awareness. So when I help take this work into companies and I share like, hey, your employees are, based on these surveys, they're telling me they're stressed, they're not real engaged, they're fearful of whether they're going to have a job or not, they're uncertain of the future, then automatically when you start to implement these new changes in the company and you're trying to grow and develop new ways to work better and smarter, their guards are already up. So it's very hard to enter in that way. So when we teach them in the workshops, like how do you self-regulate those emotions? How do you come out of high beta into low beta? And then even further through meditation, drop into places like alpha or theta brainwaves where you're pretty much in a hypnotic state where you can enter in information into the subconscious mind where you're highly suggestible. So if I want to rewrite a new program, rewrite a new habit or thought or belief, that's the perfect time to do it because you've disconnected from your outside environment. You don't have all the information coming in, not just social media, but from your eyes, your ears, your nose, like what you're tasting. And then also you're telling your body to, hey, sit and stay. You'll get taken care of. You can get a coffee later. You can go to the bathroom. But in this moment, we're safe. And then we're not focused on time. We're not focused on what happened yesterday. We're not focused on what's going on later. And like when you're truly in that present moment, the brain is not going to know the difference between the real life experience that's creating that emotion and the thought alone. And so when that happens, you can enter in that new thought of what that new future self looks like in that workplace, feel what it feels like to be empowered, to be making changes, to not be stressed in your biology, your neurocircuitry, your neurochemistry, hormones, gene expression. They're all starting to change internally because you brought the power of your brain. You don't know the difference between the two. And it's like when I tell people that and they know that they can use that as a tool to then step into the workplace and be better without even having to do it physically, I feel like that's just like icing on the cake for them to really double dip in their work because they get to do it before work through mentally rehearsing it. And then when they get into work, like it's a cakewalk.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly too, you can correct me if I'm wrong because this is kind of your field of things, but isn't it true that your conscious mind is more quiet right before bed and then first thing in the morning? So if you are going to throw in suggestive thoughts, try to do some of these meditations right before bed and first thing in the morning. Is that true? Yeah,
absolutely. And when you think of the different brainwave patterns, you and I both, no matter what, everybody actually moves from what's called delta, which is deep sleep, restorative sleep, and we move into theta, then alpha, and then beta, which is conscious aware when we're awake. And then we do the opposite when we go to sleep, right? We're in beta right now. We finally rest into alpha, then into theta, and then into delta, and we're in deep sleep. So we can do that already, and we're already doing that. So when you can get out of delta, and then you're already not always fully transitioned into beta, especially with a lot of information going in, it's a little bit easier to kind of stay in that fine line between alpha and theta, which is that more suggestible subconscious state, like the doors of the subconscious are wide open. And so that's really the best time, I believe, and from kind of what the research shows, that you're already going through that process to be able to utilize that, so you don't have to come out of maybe high beta in the middle of the day. So you're not down regulating, you're just trying to stay in that nice little gap of alpha and theta brain waves.
Okay. Do you have any preferred easy or easier breathwork techniques, meditation techniques to be able to bring people down into a calmer state?
Yeah, one of the easiest ones I always feel is just, the brain and the body are always connected, and so I always kind of focus on the heart too, right? My thing is just put my hands over my heart, and you can kind of set an intention, right? So whatever it is, gratitude, less stress, confidence, and you just really, I always just like to tell people, just breathe in that for 5 seconds and exhale for 5 seconds, and just put a nice calming song on. And those 2 to 3 minutes can be really easy to regulate out of high beta into a more comfortable conscious state. And then in terms of meditation, just knowing that you're not doing it wrong when you're meditating. It's going to take practice. So a week later, when you have a thought that pops up, that's normal. So if you notice you have that thought popping up, that's a win. That's a victory. You're becoming conscious of the unconscious thoughts that you normally would run with. And so I just give that piece of advice. And I always tell any clients, like, these are the 3 things I always say. Surrender to the experience, because the experience is the experience. Don't have an expectation on the meditation, because if you're expecting what's coming next, you're basing it off the past.
Right.
So that's not surrendering to the experience, and just have fun with it and practice with it, and know that you're not doing it right or wrong. It's just a practice. Just like when you started driving or whatever.
Meditation to me, it used to be that way, whereas to get me to sit still for any amount of time at all was borderline impossible. My wife would jag me all the time. She's like, you just need to sit. You just be quiet. I'm like, well, if I do, then I gotta get this done. I gotta get this done, this. And it can be difficult. So when it comes to meditations, I have what I call like my passive meditations, then my active meditations, where like I'll do like a Wim Hof, where it's like I'm actively doing it, I'm counting, I'm breathing, I'm in it, I'm like, okay. And then afterwards you're like, oh, this is a great time to meditate. I'm super calm right now. Or doing like a box breathing, where you breathe in, 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, breathe out 4 seconds, hold 4 seconds. And doing those things allows you to get into a more calm state, engage that parasympathetic a little bit more, because our goal really should be to stay out of fight or flight and maintain a healthier, level of homeostasis, right? Because that's kind of how we've been regulated. Either we have elation or depression dictating our mood. The faster we can accept it and get back to that normal, the more adaptive our bodies are and the healthier our bodies are, right?
Right. Yeah. And that's kind of exactly when we talk about our thoughts, because you mentioned all organisms in nature are meant to be okay in short-term stress, right? We got to get away. Then we also have to be able to revert. But if we're always in survival mode, then that's really not what's going on. And so you talked earlier about getting into meditation before or after bed, right? Well, we're just coming out of parasympathetic, hopefully, into sympathetic. And so it kind of meets that good little time frame for that to happen. And I think that's really the goal between it, is how can we move back into the parasympathetic more regularly, and through the box breathing and even the Wim Hof, which I really enjoy, right? You feel nice, calm, cool, collected, and then you're already halfway there when it comes to the meditation. And, you mentioned, and I was the same way when I first started meditating. I had and anybody can do this. It's an Insight timer. It was the first one I ever used. It's an app, free, lots of meditations. Yeah. When I would do a 2-minute meditation, I'd be like, I was like super pumped. And now, sometimes, I sat for 1.5 hours, 4.5 hours, 5 hours, I don't know, but that's not regular for 5 hours, but normally like an hour or so. But even then, when I was doing it for 2 minutes, just like you, I was so go that my body was like, yo, this is not normal. We're going to do everything we can to pull you out. So it's going to think about, I got to do this. I got this test to do. Dang, this thing happened yesterday, which means I got to do this later. And so it's kind of throwing out all the stops. Mm-hmm. And then as you start to practice and flex that brain muscle, you're just creating consciousness around like, hey, I'm going to get to that. And when I do get to it, the more focused I am and present I am here now to rest and calm, when I enter that, I'm actually going to be more efficient, more productive, probably more creative because you're not sitting there in high beta. So it's just a practice. I mean, think about when you go to the gym, right? You don't just hit the bench press and all of a sudden you got a jacked chest. It's just, you have to, it works over time. And I think that's everything in life. And that's the cool part is you just have fun with it. I thought for a while I was just checking the box and somewhat making it a chore. And when I realized that, no, this is helping me and I can have fun with it, you actually get into it a lot easier because you're not putting an assumption or an expectation on what it needs to feel like, because everyone's different. So there's no right or wrong standard feature for everybody. You're unique, I'm unique, our partners are unique, everyone's unique. So what's good for them isn't good for me. So there's no way for someone to really gauge that. It's based off their own feelings.
Yeah, and I feel like it's one of the things that it's like our animal instincts have been removed from us. And my son, and even my daughter, they love watching this show on PBS called Wild Kratts. And it's like these two guys that will talk about animal powers, that like certain animals will have this, that, and the other thing. And they did an episode on cheetahs. And cheetahs, they can only run for a certain amount of time. And I'm probably going to be wrong in saying I think it's like 40 seconds or something. And if they don't get what they're getting after in 40 seconds, their body literally shuts down. They just lay down and they have to catch their breath. They have to just rest. And they know innately that they just burned all of their energy. It's going to take them a lot longer to recover, and they may not get that food for like the rest of the day. So that's an animal instinct. And for us, when we go through those fight or flights, it's like we go through one tragedy, if you will, and we just consume another, and then another, and then another. And the news outlets, I mean, there's everything to get mad about, especially nowadays. But when you wake up in the morning and you pull up your phone, you start scrolling on Instagram, unless you're looking at Pat and I's content, which is all uplifting and amazing,
sure,
you're typically going to be guzzling down drama, competition. You try to compete with somebody else, keeping up with the Joneses. Another tragedy happens, and then you turn on the news and you consume that. So tragedy to tragedy, and then you get in the car and you're slowly moving, not even slowly, you're aggressively moving away from that normal happy, that homeostasis. And then somebody cuts you off and you're about to rip their throats out. And it could be that person has a woman in labor in the back seat. You don't know. They may have cut you off. It's not a big deal. It's not a threat to you. It may have seemed like it. Move on from it. But it's just like the ball keeps steamrolling over and over and over again. When you get into those moments, I would assume, and you could, again, tell me if I'm wrong, that would be a great time to realize, hey, I'm being overwhelmed right now. I need to step back. I need to do some form of a meditation because I need to hit the reset button on the day. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's you get to choose right in that moment. How could I think differently about this? So the more you and I talk about it, once someone hears this, maybe they start putting it into practice, they're going to develop that mode of thinking. And it's kind of like, it's hard not to know what you already know. So when they hear that, and then that comes up, they're going to think, oh, Jacque and Pat, news, traffic. Like they're going to be like, oh wait, I get to filter and say, I get to allow that. And so, you know what? Maybe they do have someone going into labor in their backseat. Maybe I can chill today, something like that. And so, yeah, in that moment, even that, changing that thought pattern is then pruning away those old connections that used to get someone so frustrated and angry and putting in new connections. And so it's just unfiring of the old thoughts and new firing of the new thoughts. And when we start to flex that muscle and do it over and over again, it becomes the new normal. That's the new voice in the side of our head. That's our new demeanor. It's more automatic. It's more natural. And you made up a great point is when we wake up in the morning and the first thing we do is we check our phone and then we think about our problems, right? That's all based in the past because right away when that happens, now we're giving our kind of our free will up to the past. So the brain has an emotion that's associated with a problem, right? You think about, now I got to go deal with this today. Well, that's based in the past. And so you're going to take an action based in the past. And now you do more actions based in the past. It's pretty safe for me to say that I could take your yesterday and put it on your tomorrow because you're going to have the same predictable future because you're always going to be doing thinking, feeling, and taking action equal to the past. And so you talked about the unknown being scary. Sure, the unknown's scary. It's new. It's unfamiliar. You don't know what's going to happen, but in the unknown, when you're present, you actually have an unlimited amount of possibilities for you to create from and to exist, other than those fixed possibilities. Because if you're doing everything in the past, that's known. So you already know what that's like. How can you make new results doing the same old thing with the same old mind? And that's what I really like to drive home is the unknown. Yes, it's scary, but it's new. It means possibility. It doesn't mean that it's fearful. And when we're in the generous present moment, this is kind of the sweet spot. There are no limitations because we can do whatever we want right now. Otherwise, we have limitations if we're worried about the familiar past or basically a predictable future for most people if they do everything based in the past. It's so easy to get caught up in that. And look, I'm no exception. Do I have those days? Sure, right? I accidentally forgot to put my phone on Do Not Disturb. And when I go in to set my alarm clock for the cold shower, the first thing I see is an email. And then I'm like, oh, then I'm just sitting there. And next thing you know, I look, and there I am just reverting back to the past. But I catch myself and I get to say, hey, look, this isn't the end of the day. You don't have to go unconscious the rest of the day. You can make a conscious decision to break out of this. And everybody has that decision. And it's super empowering, I think, when people hear that I don't have to fall victim to that anymore, right? Yes, I can still enjoy it, but if I'm consuming it consciously, then that's not so bad. And we're all going to have, balance, or what we call balance in life. If we're so restrictive, then the moment we jump off, it's going to go way downhill. So how can we integrate it to where there's just a little bit more ease of flow with it all and not beat ourselves up about, when you think about like a diet, okay, last night I ate a burger and fries, but the rest of the week, which is what, if you eat 3 meals a day, 21 meals for a day or a week, 1 out of 21, that's pretty good, right? So I think it's very easy to beat ourselves up, but we just have to be compassionate and kind to ourselves and know that it's all work in progress.
Yeah. I think the ability to be able, again, I'll think about the ebb and flow of it. Like we have our up days, we have our down days. And again, as quickly as we can get back to that homeostasis, the better. And I think it's the conscious awareness is the key piece of this. And I wanted to ask, do you feel that there are a lot of checkpoints during the day? Because not everybody's like an entrepreneur. Not everybody makes their own schedule. A lot of people's days are pretty predictable in that they wake up, they have their cup of coffee in the morning, or turn on the news, we could pretty much predict a lot of 9-to-5ers days. So is it fair to say that this information may seem overwhelming and it's like, well, I have the choice to choose, but I'm stressed all the time? Is it safe to say that there are checkpoints that a lot of people do in a given day that you only have to tweak maybe 5-6 things in a day, and then that can free you up for a lifetime of happiness?
Sure. Yeah, to agree. Think about if you go into work right away. This is just one tweak, right? You're driving into work and you have an alarm on your phone, right? More than likely you have a schedule, right? You drive to work the same way at the same exact time. You get stuck in the same exact traffic, pissed at the exact same time, right? 9 o'clock, Jacque. You better start getting pissed at traffic soon. Otherwise, we're going to throw a thought your way to make you pissed. So, but in that moment, you can have an alarm on your phone. You're going to go to work at that same time. And that moment could be, okay, you don't like your job, right? Let's say you don't like your job. Okay, if I don't like my job, let's change the thought. Instead of I don't like my job, I don't enjoy my job, but what could I do differently? Could I find someone else that's hiring? Maybe. Could I maybe give a little bit more effort? Could I ask my boss what I could do better to earn a promotion? So all of these are just triggering ways of thinking. So whatever individuals are looking to improve, whatever they don't like, whatever they like to shed away, how can you just reframe the thought? And that's going to open up possibilities. Because then if the thought is, maybe I want to look for another job, the next thing is to make a choice. They're going to go on to whatever, Indeed, right? Or something. Yeah. Now they're making an action. And they're like, okay, this feels like possibility. They're having an experience of checking in to something different. And now that emotion brings maybe the confidence they're looking for, or shines a light on, it doesn't have to be so pessimistic. And then all of a sudden they get that email, right? Hey, we want to interview you. And now they make a thought, oh my God, I have a possibility to do this. They make the choice to go to the interview, and then they go to the interview, they have an experience, the people love them. They get a feeling of, oh my God, someone actually believes in me again.
Yeah.
Guess what? You do that over and over again, that's called evolution. And then you can just do that and everything. And so, yeah, there are definitely checkpoints. And so I would always recommend, what are the areas where you might not be so appreciative for life? What are things you want to change? And just, you can set an alarm on your phone. You can have a partner remind you, hey, when you're in this state, what's some different ways of thinking about this? Because once you change the thought of it, it's going to catapult into the next choice, and then into the action, and then to the experience, and then into the emotion. And like you said, we get tied to the emotion. The emotion is tied inside of us.
Yeah.
So just like someone can be addicted to their thoughts, I might be addicted to working out because I love the feeling that it gives to me, but I would rather have the habits of something that's helpful versus the habits of something that's really hurting me and my biology and all these different things that we can't see on the inside.
Yeah. Do you ever hear about Dr. John DeMartini? Did you ever hear about him? That
sounds really familiar.
So he was another one that I found out about before Dr. Dispenza. So DeMartini, he had I think he might still have an office. He was a chiropractor in Houston, Texas. And he was talking about pretty similar with the work side of things. It's like, you may hate your job and you don't have any plans to go anywhere from your job. So how can you then perceive your job in a different way? And it's like, yes, I'm working 9 to 5. I hate the people that I work with and my boss is a jerk. However, this job gives me the ability to put food on the table. It gives me the ability to have a car. It gives me the ability to go on vacations. It gives me the ability to have health insurance if you, not a joke, but if you believe in health insurance. So there's like different ways to perceive these things. But John DeMartini used to talk about that all of the time because not too many people are willing to make that jump out of the 9 to 5 to go into a different job. So it's just a different lens to look through.
Yeah. And I think to a degree I've been there. So I've been into the 9 to 5. So I have a little bit more appreciation for how easy that can be.
Yeah.
But it's also just easy to give up and make an excuse on that. So it's going to be uncomfortable and hard because it's not something you're used to. And that name sounded familiar, but he's reframing how you can have your thought around it. And when you start to look in it maybe in a more positive light, it's good. But it goes a little bit farther than just the positive thinking, right? I'm not just promoting positive thinking because you have to feel it true, right?
Yes.
You can't just say, positive thinking today, because if you don't truly feel it, then the moment that next curveball gets thrown at you, you're going to go right back to what has always known, and now the positive thinking out the window. And to condition your body like you did to the stressed out thought, you also have to condition your body to the positive thinking, and that's going to be tied to an emotion. And it's all what I always think of is when we let that environment dictate how we think and feel, then you kind of gave up that free will to a sense. But when we add the positive thinking with the emotional charge, it starts to hardwire a little bit better because you actually have a snapshot of what that looks like. And so the brain has the more ammunition to pull from, opposed to just going right into what we always have known to a degree.
Yeah. I feel like I could talk to you about this stuff. We probably will. We'll probably continue some text after.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
But I don't want to keep talking to you off this whole time. You gave a lot of value, and I don't want to go too long with this because this is an episode I feel like people are going to have to listen to probably multiple times because there's a lot of gems that you've been able to give, and I'm very appreciative of that. If you have some advice, just quick advice for somebody who is maybe stuck and they don't know where to go from there, do you have any advice for somebody like that?
I would say, like, what are you stuck with? And when you're trying to get out of that, how can you get very specific, get very descriptive on, one, what it is you're stuck with, what don't you enjoy about that, and what would be the opposite side of that? What would be your goal coming out of that? And not just, I want to feel better. Like, put some numbers to it, put a date to it, understand the reason. As you mentioned earlier on, what's the why behind it? Is it because you want a new job that's going to pay you more so you and your family can move into a bigger house and you would need to do X, Y, and Z? Like, get very descriptive. If you're feeling stuck, okay, what's the opposite of you feeling stuck? Is unstuck. But how do you define that? And it's not just, want to make more money. How much money? I can give you $1. You want to make more money? I can give you $1. Are you going to be happy with that? Probably not. But get more descriptive and very fine-tune and understand the why behind it. And so then you have a little bit emotional charge behind it. So, in terms of like goal setting, right? You can just focus on a descriptive goal and really find what's going to tie to you that emotionally, because that's going to be easier for you to bring top of mind than if it's just, I feel good and it's very vague. That's not going to like kind of hold you accountable. So getting very descriptive on what it is you want. And then once you have that intention, start to act on it. Whatever it is, as small as looking on Indeed, it could be as small as making a call to an old connection. Just get that momentum rolling and you'll start to feel more comfortable in creating something different if you're feeling stuck and not appreciative for where you're at right then.
I love it, man. And how can people find you, reach out to you?
Sure. Most active, I would say, on Instagram. So that's Pat Smith Wellness. That's on Instagram. My website's also available, Pat Smith Wellness. So those are the two ways that would be most easiest for individuals to connect, chat, reach out, and just, gain any other information that I can share with them.
And what are some courses, offers, and things that you have currently that are available to other people to work with you?
Sure. What a lot of my primary focus right now is a specific course called Change Your Mind, Create New Results. And that's the course that was developed directly by Dr. Joe Dispenza. So I do it in two fashions. I do it one as a virtual training, and it's kind of like an open training. So anyone who's employed in any capacity, self-employed, entrepreneur, works as a W-2 job, doesn't matter. I hold those virtually about every other month, and that's a 12-hour to 15-hour intensive interactive workshop. So that's one way that they could work with me. And then, for instance, if someone is a business owner, a team leader, a manager, HR, head of HR, I also bring that same program and we tailor it towards the corporate side of things. And I do that with companies, and we bring in, up to 20 or so team members to be able to then implement that. And then with each one of those programs is a 30-day follow-up process so that we can start to know that it's not going to be, I give you a bunch of information, now all of a sudden you're changed, right? Yeah. We need to work that muscle. We need to initiate it, personalize it, demonstrate it so that we can move that philosophical information, and you can go from mind to body to soul, from philosopher to initiate to master, and then it's innate in you. And so you start to do things, but you don't know how to do them. You just do them, right? Yeah. Just like when you're driving a car, we can drive and text and eat all at the same time, but that's because we've done it so long. So those are the two fashions that I really like to start people with, because once I go there and they understand that, then normally I will work with them potentially one-on-one, but I like to use that as a prerequisite. Sure. So they understand what's going on and how to change habits truly.
Awesome. Well, again, man, I appreciate you coming on here. We may have to do another one of these just to bring more information on it. But
for sure,
thank you for joining, man. I'll release you for the rest of the day. But yeah, I'm very grateful for you being here. Thank you so much again.
No, it was an honor. I appreciate you having me, and look forward to catching up here soon.
Absolutely, man.